And welcome to this week's edition of Conservative Arkansas Media. I'm your host, Paul Harrell. Thank you so much for being with us. We got a great show coming up on the program. We're going to be talking with State Senator Bryan King. He recently wrote an op-ed about Asa Hutchinson's soft week record on crime. It was published over at nationalfile.com. And so we're going to be talking with Senator Bryan King about that op-ed and really just kind of reminisce about, Arkansas corruption. That's I got a feeling that's what's going to happen. Anyway, but I wanted to start the show. Have you guys seen this viral clip? It's about queer or gender. It's called Queer Theory. That's right. So it's Queer Theory Jeopardy, and I know that sounds. Well, what is that? Well, within the LGBT movement, there have been so-called philosophers in past that have theorized about gender and have theorized about sexual fluidity, I guess, and they're basically kind of the founders of this movement. Well, there's a professor by the name of Derek Jensen who decided to play Jeopardy with his students and highlighting that every queer theory philosopher at one point or another has argued for decriminalizing pedophilia. It's gone viral, and that's one of the reasons why it's gone viral. We're going to listen to this clip, and the student reaction in the classroom is one of swearing, cursing, four-letter words. So be warned if you have young children, you may not want them to know this. But this guy is courageously exposing exposing these people in their own words and just laying it in front of students, and all they can say is, you're a homophobe for bringing it up. Take a listen.
There is a long correlation between anarchism and pedophilia and support for pedophilia. Wait. That's a beautiful line. Thank you so much for asking. How about something relevant? I've been talking about rape culture all day, and pedophilia and the support of pedophilia is not rape culture? Actually, it seems you're acting like this is a spurious connection. So we're going to play Jeopardy. We're going to play queer theory. We're going to play queer theory pedophilia Jeopardy. Okay, answer. Commonly called the godfather of queer theory.
Who is Foucault?
Who is Foucault?
I got it.
Okay, 100 points. Foucault. Another way to ask this is, who argued? No, I guess the answer would be argued for the eradication of age of consent laws, as in down to infants.
Who is Foucault?
Thank you.
Okay, next one.
All right, now, so there are some students that appear to be good with this. The classroom maybe kind of appears to be divided. There are some students who are agreeing that the professor is bringing this up, that this is where their thought leads. It starts with, just like it started with, well, it's just two guys that want to get married, that's all they want. Clearly, that's not the case. Clearly, we can see a gradation or slippery slope, if you will, to where we are now. But back to this. This is fascinating. This is a courageous professor, and we need to highlight people like this because where are they now, right? Where are they? Most of them are gone. They're not courageous, or if they do what he does, they get fired. We'll see. Hopefully, that doesn't happen to him.
The author of the founding document of queer theory. Who is Gail Rubin? What percentage? No. The answer is 50%. Question is,
the amount in that article that was a defense of pedophilia, specifically, quote, boy lovers, so men and boys.
Oh. And since you're not believing me, quote, this is in the founding document of queer theory. Like communists and homosexuals in the 1950s, boy lovers are so stigmatized that it is difficult to find defenders of their civil liberties, let alone for their erotic orientation. That's in the founding document of queer theory. I'm sorry, I'm using facts. A thousand apologies. One must never let facts in the way. Oh, and she also compared, by the way, she compared pedophilia to a preference for spicy food. The thing is, I have never heard of anyone who has to have years of therapy because they ate hot and sour soup. Okay, so up to 200. Now it is pedophilia and queer theory for 300. That would be author of Macho Sluts. Author of Macho Sluts and Public Sex. Pat Califia.
Derek Jensen is an eco-fascist.
Wait. What was it somebody said? Stay relevant. Okay, let's talk about Pat Califia.
Why don't you respond?
Because I can't respond. Transphobe.
Okay, here's something from one of Pat Califia's books. You know, it's really interesting. It's really interesting that when I actually start talking about the relationship between queer theory and anarchism and pedophilia, that it becomes, they really want to shut me up now. Okay, so here's Pat Califia. Pat Califia. Oh, wait, just a second. I was accused of homophobia because I am against pedophilia. Who is it who actually makes the connections between that? Okay, here's something by Pat Califia. Pat Califia has written, any child old enough to decide whether or not she or he wants to eat spinach, play with trucks, or wear shoes is old enough to decide whether or not she wants to run around naked in the sun, masturbate, sit in someone's lap, or engage in sexual activity, by which she does not mean play doctor, she means with adults. She's very clear about that because she also says that pedophiles should be more and not less invested in children's lives. Okay, so we're at 300. 400 is the most famous queer theorist of today. Answer. No, it is not Judith Butler. It's who is Judith Butler? Okay, Judith Butler is the most famous queer theorist of the day.
We see you, all of you supporters here, who do not care about trans people's lives. Every person here supports Derek Jones.
Okay. Here's a great quote from Judith Butler.
Are you supporting him?
Okay, so Judith Butler wrote, so I keep adding this qualification. When incest is a violation, suggesting I think there may be occasions in which it's not. Why would I talk that way? Well, I do think that there are probably forms of incest that are not necessarily traumatic, and which gain their traumatic character by virtue of the consciousness of social stain that they produce. Yeah, that's Judith Butler. That's one of the queer heroes. Okay, now we have for 500 we have the last one in the queer theory and pedophilia. The answer is queer theorist who has spoken out strongly against pedophilia.
Zero. Who is no one.
Who is no one, not a single one. Because the entire thing is based on transgressing. Yeah, I know, dear.
Oh my goodness! I told you, I warned you of the language there. That last one for 500. Again, that was queer theory, pedophilia, jeopardy. I didn't think I would be saying those words when I woke up this morning. That's Professor Derek Jensen. You could hear the classroom divided. People just don't want to hear the truth. But the last one, number 500, number of queer theory, philosophers who didn't advocate for pedophilia. Zero. Unbelievable. And so this is why, and I'll just take this right here, and we can shift it to what is Arkansas doing? What has Arkansas done? Well, Arkansas is trying to fight this. But a lot of Arkansas politicians, I think, even need to know this. They need to see this. They need to know where this ideology is coming from. We need to study this like we are at war, because we very much are at war, and the people we're trying to protect are our children. Our most precious resource, our most precious thing are our children. And they rely, and as we talked about before, they have a demographic problem, and so they have to do the education, they have to infiltrate the education, they have to create new converts because they themselves are just not having children, and then they're having surgeries that just actually make it impossible to do so. So here in Arkansas, we are passing laws that are stopping this nonsense from being legal, because it shouldn't be legal for children. I actually think it shouldn't be legal at all for anybody. But look, I can triage this, and we can try to save it, just like we did with abortion for years. We're going to try to do as much as we can to save as many lives as we can. And that means passing state laws, knowing that the activist judges are going to throw them out. And then eventually, what happened? You know, you have the Dobbs decision that, to me, comes out of nowhere. Never really expected that happening. What a blessing. You know, and they may need to change when Pride Month is, by the way, in June. They may need to change it because that's also when all the Supreme Court decisions get released. And the Supreme Court right now is made up of a lot of conservatives, or I would say originalists for the most part. And so every June now, every Pride Month, there's going to be potentially a Dobbs-like decision, an affirmative action-like decision that happened, you know, the other week. So, all right, we're going to take a break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with State Senator Bryan King. This is Conservative Arkansas Media. Don't go anywhere. And welcome back to Conservative Arkansas Media. I'm Paul Harrell. So many times you have governors that run for president, and there's all this national hype about, you know, whether it's Ron DeSantis or, in Arkansas's case, Asa Hutchinson. He's now running for governor. He thinks he has a prayer of sniffing the White House. And a lot of times people get questions. If you're from the respective state where a governor is running, people want to ask about maybe what is really a little-known record. A lot of these guys don't get national coverage when they're, unless you're Ron DeSantis, you know, when you're the governor of a state. So one of the people that gets asked a lot of questions apparently is Senator Bryan King. Matter of fact, there is an op-ed over at nationalfile.com from Senator Bryan King, headline there on their screen: King say no to Asa Hutchinson, political illusionist. It's a really good piece up at National File right now. You can check it out, nationalfile.com. Senator King writes, I'm often asked about our former governor by people who aren't familiar with him, and I tell them to find out about his true record and not the political illusion he campaigns on. Senator Bryan King joins us now. Senator King, good to see you again.
Hey, good to see you, Paul.
All right, so just obviously I know that out of anybody in Arkansas politics, you probably know Asa Hutchinson's record better than anybody. And so you wanted to write this op-ed. Why?
Well, I mean, I think, you know, my wife and I took a trip northeast, and we went to New York and Vermont and New Hampshire, Maine, you know, and of course I wear an Arkansas t-shirt or something. People ask, and every once in a while, which is kind of indicative of the polls right now, that he's not getting anything. You know, somebody want to ask about politics, and certainly in New Hampshire, things are already starting to happen up there, and people ask. And as you know, covering Arkansas legislature, what happens down here is, you know, it got reported. I mean, as you both know very well, you know, what really happens is not always reported. So it's like, well, he gives these great stump speeches and sounds real good and talks about his time as a career U.S. attorney and when he was appointed. So, you know, once again, the facts bear out something very different. And it was just like this last time. There was an article came out, and the FBI ranked Arkansas dead last or first, whichever way you want to look at it, in violent crime. And we were in the top 5 in property crime. So that's a reflection of Asa Hutchinson and how he basically dismantled the Arkansas crime, you know, fighting system. He hampered it, stopped it. His main, you know, crime fighter was, you know, his nephew, Jeremy Hutchinson, the state senator I served with, who's now serving time in federal prison. So it's like, you know, once again, this guy goes out there and says, hey, I'm this crime fighter. We need to do this. We need to do that. Well, let's look at your record here in Arkansas. And it's horrible.
Yeah, and you started in your piece detailing the crime problem that initially started under former Democrat Governor Mike Beebe. It shed a little bit of light on that because that had to do with trying to essentially excuse irresponsible, budget gimmicks. So this was a budget gimmick, but it ended up making violent crime worse, right?
That's right. It was like we came in and Governor Beebe went to spending money in 2009 and 10, and we were hit with the recession, and he looked for budget cuts to make things, cash flow because he spent way too much money, and he, far more or less, I will give him credit than what Republicans like Asa Hutchinson did when he got into office, but. So they came up with a bill, and as I tell people all the time, the better title of a bill sounds, the worse it is. And this was in 2011, the Public Protection Act, which basically was a budget crunch and trying to let people out of jail early and title it something different. So some of us that voted against it, were called mean. We were actually called, the typical things of the name calling starts in. And so that started it. And then when Governor Hutchinson took over in 2014, he turned over all his crime reform, get tough on crime, to his nephew and others, his other nephew, Jim Hendren, who was in the state Senate too, and others in the Arkansas legislature. And basically, they just enacted policies that spent more money, but yet did not address the crime issue. And as we know today, the main criminal, that he could have turned to was his nephew, who's now in federal prison. And so he always wants to talk tough on this crime and call President Trump out or anybody else on everything they do, but he has got a lot he needs to focus on.
Well, I mean, aside from the clearly globalist establishment leanings of Asa, I mean, when you do come, you're running for president, as I said earlier, a lot of people really don't know the minutia of the record. Now, I think, generally speaking, conservatives, America First, Republicans, or whatever, they're not even thinking about supporting or voting for Governor Asa Hutchinson. But it is interesting that he is essentially a pawn on this chessboard where all these candidates are running. Nikki Haley, Hutchinson, Vivek Ramaswamy, all of these candidates, and there are more. But it's fascinating why he threw his hat in the ring in the first place. When in reality, I mean, the more candidates that get in the race actually helps the idea that Donald Trump will get the Republican nomination again.
Okay, so I go back into Arkansas politics, Republican politics, over 30 years ago when Asa Hutchinson was, and his brother was running for Congress and U.S. Senate. So I know him very well. And basically, Asa Hutchinson is like Joe Biden. I mean, he has to have government, and that's all he depends on. So it doesn't matter. He's going to sell or say or do whatever. It doesn't matter what his record is to keep the big donors and the money people happy or try and sell to people. And the reality is that that's who he is. And you look at his family. His family, for example, is just like the Bidens. I mean, they have to make money off of being in power and being in the government. That's why they never stay out. And that's why you should never count him out of a primary or anything, because anybody that only makes a living off government. And you look at his son, for example. His son, for example, is the Hunter Biden of Arkansas, in and out of trouble, on the payroll of Chinese companies, everything. And so it doesn't matter. The whole game is there for them to play Arkansas politics and play politics because their financial future depends on it. And they'll do or say anything to keep that going.
I'm not, I know prosecutors, I know they look at optics and stuff like that, and this is my own naivete, but it just shows you that the whole system, the uniparty, it's all one big club. In my, delusions of grandeur, you can think, well, if the DOJ were to go after Biden and his son, a Democrat, they could also go after Asa and his son for maybe on a smaller scale, but essentially the same thing as we've detailed here and other places. And then it would look bipartisan, but they don't care about that stuff. I mean, if you're an asset, if you're in the club, then they're going to turn a blind eye to it every single time, and it should be illegal the idea that you can make the sons and family members of American politicians rich, that foreign countries can do this, should be illegal because it's just a way to enrich the politician, really just through the back door.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, down here in Arkansas, I mean, me and former Senator Linda Collins were the only two that would really step out and be vocal. And what do? You draw primary opponents, you draw funded money to try and beat you, to try and shut you up of telling the truth, and then the rest of the people down there are basically cowards or in on the other deals themselves. And so that's exactly right. And that's why you should count somebody like Asa Hutchinson out, because even if he doesn't make president, he's going to angle for a cabinet job. He'll do whatever it takes to get back in there. And it's just like I said, you go back to this crime issue, you hear him talk. He was a former U.S. attorney. He's going to be tough on crime. No, he let thousands of hardened criminals out early and refused, knocked down and defeated measures that would have been tough on crime. So that's who he is. And
here's some more from your op-ed here, because I want to talk about this. In 2017, I filed a public safety bill that would require a 4-time convicted felon to serve 80% of his sentence. Crimes committed by repeat offenders were spiraling out of control and had to be addressed. Contrary to the political illusion created by the Hutchinson's task force, earlier in the op-ed you mentioned how task forces are, political sleight of hand. Crime had gotten worse. I was able to win passage of my repeat offender bill in the Senate, only to be opposed and defeated by Governor Hutchinson. He used a variation of the old Bernie Sanders illusion, alleging that my bill would increase costs and harm the state budget, preventing teachers from educating kids and throwing grandma over the cliff. What he said wasn't true. You have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, that's just exactly what they do. And I mean, I fought the bill out of the Senate, and of course, he had his two nephews trying to beat the bill. Senator Jim Hendren, Senator Jeremy Hutchinson, who's now in federal pen now, trying to beat the bill because it was going to be a big price tag. So when he got over to the House, they kept asking, how are you going to pay for it? How are you going to pay for it? Well, at that time, Amazon, one of the avenues I gave was Amazon was going to voluntarily remit the internet tax that they were collecting. At that time, it wasn't being collected. So they were going to voluntarily do that. And I said, well, let's put that as a dedicated revenue stream to pay for prisons, pay for law enforcement. Let's try and bolster things before things get worse. Of course, that was rejected because they had to pay for their Medicaid overspending and other bloated government. So it's like they only want to slap your hand when it gets into something that has to pay for what they want. And, once again, we got back to the bribes and the kickbacks and everything else was the real reason. But, for Governor Hutchinson to sit there and, once again, they just tell lies. They do whatever they'll say, whatever to, get the focus off of something else. It's not the issue. It's, well, you're mean and you're a bully and you're, Paul, what you go through. And you're going to wreck the state budget. You're going to do all these other things when in reality, they're the ones wrecking state budget and they have to have the money. And they Asa Hutchinson did nothing less than let hardened criminals out of prison, him, both his nephews. And now we have the statistics that back up everything I said, where we're the worst state or the top state for violent crime in the nation and top 5 in property.
Yeah, and so fast forward to the here and now. There was a giant reform bill passed, criminal justice reform bill passed this last session. What do you think of that? Do you think this could fix a lot of what you were trying to fix back in 2017?
We're so far underwater now, even this measure, and understand now with the cost of everything going up, we would have saved hundreds of millions of dollars had you went with my plan, which would not have raised taxes because, Amazon was voluntarily remitting that tax anyway. So we could have built this and done with it and saved hundreds of millions of dollars. Now some of the same ones beating their chest on this, like Bart Hester or whoever, and saying, oh, we're doing this now. Well, where was Bart Hester in 2017? He wasn't going to do it. He wasn't going to beat the budget and enforce this issue. And so now it's actually costing taxpayers. And the reality is, even if they build the prisons, they're saying it's just going to basically maybe catch us up to the backlog that we've already sit there and put off.
Wow. I mean, the thing is, violent crime is certainly going on all across the state. I mean, the uptick, everybody has seen it. Everybody's noticed it, local news, media reports. It's happening everywhere. It's worse in some places than others, but it's still noticeable. And if the government has any responsibility at all, it's to make sure that violent criminals go to jail. I mean, it's the one thing that if you're going to spend taxpayer money on, you should spend taxpayer money on, in my opinion. And I know there are different ways to do that. What say you?
Yeah, I mean, you have this was about repeated violent offenders, trying to lock them up, and they had to commit 4 offenses before they served 80% of their sentence. So it wasn't like you were being hard on them the first time. And Governor Hutchinson, defeated it. And like I said, he made crime worse here. And for him to go out and talk, and his nephews too were right in there on it. Senator Hendren, Senator Jeremy Hutchinson, they were right in there in the whole thing, sitting there beating it. Well, at the same time, they're misleading people on what the real problem is and to hide their own wrecking of the budget.
Well,
and you're right. The tax dollars should lock up repeated violent offenders, and they just didn't do it. They would fight it.
Well, just to repeat, you mentioned several times that one of the governor's nephews, former Senator Jeremy Hutchinson, is now in jail. I just want to hear it from you. What's he in jail for, Bryan?
He was in jail for bribery back to Medicaid entities, passing bills and taking bribes and kickbacks at that time. And, and so you look at the governor's son, he has been repeatedly in trouble. I mean, he's the Hunter Biden of Arkansas. I mean, that's what he is. And so, but he's sure been able to influence state government and policy in state government through his father and through legislators that are still in today. Yeah. I mean, that's quite frankly how they make a living. I mean, Hunter Biden can't make a living on his own, and neither can the Hutchinsons. And that's why they have to weave in and out of government. They'll lie about you. They'll say whatever, because this is their lifeblood and they have to have it. And so everybody says, well, Governor Hutchinson's not polling well. He doesn't have a chance. Well, he's going to have a chance at something because he's going to keep going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, Senator Jeremy Hutchinson was essentially passing the bills that outside forces and interests wanted him to pass by taking money, by getting paid extra.
That's it.
It's like a classic textbook thing of what you're not supposed to do, what is clearly illegal. Let me get your take on this. Since all of that's gone down, I mean, during the last 8 years of the Hutchinson administration, a lot of corruption in Medicaid with the kickbacks. It all was exposed. People were held accountable. People went to jail. A lot of the stuff that I was saying and you were saying, we're screaming from the rooftops, hey, there's all this corruption, and it was ignored. It was ignored by the mainstream media here in Arkansas. Has it changed anything? Has it changed how the legislature does business now that all the corruption, or a lot of the corruption, maybe not all of it, was exposed?
The only thing that's changed, or really a lot of it, has been how it's getting done. They're getting smarter about it, and the big interest and special interest. And there's an issue, I hope that you have me on, talking about crypto mining here that's come here in Arkansas in a late session bill that was passed. And so there's been a lot of things have changed and a lot of things remain the same. Now we still have today, we have a 2-year ban on lobbying, that legislators can't lobby once they leave. Well, now when they leave, guess what they call themselves, Paul? A consultant. I mean, it's just that, and no one will speak up or say anything. And it's sad. Thomas Jefferson warned us about corruption and how, corruption will destroy, and that is what is happening. And hopefully people will wake up and start paying attention. And a lot of the mainstream media down there has been culprits in protecting it. I mean, let's just be honest. And so, just try and do what you can. That's why I wrote the op-ed. That's why I come on your show and answer my positions and back it up with facts.
All right. Well, we really appreciate State Senator Bryan King. It's always great to talk to you and reminisce about Arkansas corruption. Let's hope there's less of it in the future. Thank you so much for coming on.
Hey, thanks for having me, Paul.
All right, folks, that's all the time we have. Thanks for watching.